Distant School CosmicMeteoTectonics. Vad Okiem, Bobrovskiy, Dmitry Kuznetsov. Cosmic Meteotectonics. Lecture 1. This cycle of lectures is stimulated by the publication of the list of accursed science problems in Science magazine. The list head has a riddle of a riddle. What is the universe made of? Then accursed science problems follows one by another by significance and depth of incomprehension. The 10th question is, how does the Earth's interior work? Thus there is closeness of the terrestrial riddle and the universe mystery. The incapacity of seismologists to predict the place, the magnitude, and the time of earthquakes shows most clearly the terrestrial riddle. Earthquakes often take thousands and thousands of lives in seismo and tsunami hazardous areas, and here it is appropriate to discuss the basis of seismology. The basis of seismology is seismometry, or seismography. Seismometry, or seismography, has been in existence for almost 120 years. There are tens of thousands of seismometers, or seismographs, at depths from 0 to several kilometers. So what information do owners get from great numbers of automatic seismometers, or seismographs? Seismographs record elastic, in other words, sonic waves from the Earth volume shocks, which have already occurred. For many decades, a great number of seismometer researchers were trying to predict where, when, and what magnitude will be the next earthquake on the basis of analysis of what has already occurred in the Earth's depths. The fact that the first seismometer was installed almost 120 years ago, it's arguable that it is impossible to predict the place, the time, and the magnitude of seismic events on the basis of seismographic or seismometric data. To understand the depth of incomprehension of how does Earth's interior work, Sweden geophysicist opinion must be considered. Marcus Barth had given as much on the status of geophysics in those days. He said, if the reader has got the impression that earthquake prediction is a field about which the specialist's knowledge is practically non-existing, then this is a correct impression. The same impression is gained from all published literature in this field. There is a wish at the end of the paper. He continues, but then it is gratifying to know that there is active interest in the problem, and planned projects, preferably supplemented as outlined here, will make the prospects much brighter in a decade or two. There is as yet almost a half a century of Barth's predictions, but geophysicists had not added planned projects, preferably supplemented as outlined here in the paper. The paper reported that seismic activity was being decreased in the rest of the globe in the epoch of two gigantic earthquakes occurring on the Aleutian Islands and Alaska. This is the point of Barth's global seismic effect, which had caused the appearance of the conception of global seismic resources. The culmination of global seismic resource in the area of gigantic earthquakes and its aftershocks was decreasing regional seismic resources in the rest of the world. Barth's global seismic effect informs about global connections between earthquakes' epicenters, which are situated at a distance of thousands of kilometers apart. The realization of interactions by mechanical perturbation or fluid flowing in the Earth's interior proved to be so delayed that they could not be taken as the cause of rapid Barth's seismic effect. Thus, global interconnections observed over an interval of operative progress of global seismic process could have only electrical nature. In time, Barth's global operative effect underlaid the conception of seismic globalism, which considers global seismicity as a single phenomenon. Without such conception, as well as without conception of earthquakes' nature as an electrical network and global seismic process as one, it is impossible to perceive what happened in the Earth's interior. For the first time, the hypothesis of seismic globalism and earthquakes' nature as electrical networks were implicitly presented by Gutenberg, patriarch of seismology, in his book published in the first third of the 20th century. The book contains in Chapter 11 the parallels between the frequency of earthquakes and meteorological elements and cosmic phenomena, and covered the discussions on cosmic, meteorologic, seismic correlations. The term cosmic phenomena was related to sunspots, whose magnetic fields were considered as surface occurrences of currents flowing in the deep layers of the sun. The term meteorological elements was related to structures that appeared by the condensation of electric dipoles, molecules of water, as it was assumed on the charged particles of dust in the Earth's atmosphere. Disturbances coming from the sun to the Earth have electric charged nature and cover all the globe, whereas earthquakes occur in very small, in comparison with geoid, volumes. How do such global disturbances coming from the sun concentrate in such very small volumes of earthquakes foci? The question is still open, and presents an omission for seismographicists. Parallelism of the earthquakes and cyclones also presents an omission for seismographicists. Staying on the background of the mechanical conception, as seismographicists do, it is impossible to represent how the mechanical energy of huge cyclonic disturbances concentrate in comparatively small volumes of the earthquake focus. Thus, repeated attempts to explain cosmic meteoseismic parallelism with the help of mechanical interactions between solar spots, cyclones, and earthquakes foci has no effect. Therefore, interactions which would cause such parallelism have a chance to be found in the theory of the electricity and substance. The development of Gutenberg's cosmic meteoseismic correlation conception after publishing Alfvén's book, Cosmic Plasma, in the last one-third of the 20th century was accelerated. Alfvén is famous as patriarch of plasma physics and geophysics, cosmophysics and astrophysics. The conception of electric circuits and networks are used to describe processes in astrophysical, cosmophysical, and geophysical environments, objects. As an example, Figure 3.10 from paragraph 3.5.1, tail circuit and magnetic substorms, shows electrical networks consisted of closed circuits and interprets interaction of solar wind and magnetosphere and ionosphere of the Earth. Later, electrical network conception by Alfvén was created for subterranean structures. Any two conductors supplying any electrical measuring instrument with information from a sensor of any physical nature reports on quantities and qualities of electricity in the points of the conductor's attachment to the sensor. Here, the quality of electricity is a sign of electric charge. At this point, a word of warning is in order. In the study of electricity, the only one standard is the standard cell, storing in the Parisian suburb of Meudon and preserving invariable force, which is moving electricity. Electromotive force, or EMF, or volt, is recalculated in other electric units with the help of empirical rules, coulombs, amperes, Biot-Savart-Laplaces, ohms, dual lenses, Kirchhoffs, and so on. With the help of these rules and methods of tensor analysis of network, Alfvén's electrical network conception allows us to recalculate into EMF value any parameter of non-stationary process occurring in subterranean, overground, such as tropospheric, stratospheric, ionospheric and magnetospheric, and extraterrestrial, cosmophysical and astrophysical structures involving electric charges. Following the development of CosmicMeteoTectonics, the conception of Alfvén's electrical network was generalized for all objects and environments within the solar cavity. Heliopause separates solar cavity from galaxy cavity. Extraterrestrial, cosmophysical and astrophysical electrical network models generalized objects and environments being between heliopause and geopause. Geopause separates Earth cavity from solar cavity. Overground, tropospheric, stratospheric, ionospheric, and magnetospheric electrical network models generalized objects and environments being between geopause and the boundary of condensed Earth, hydrosphere, and tectonosphere. The development of overground electrical network models is following within hydrogen degassing Earth conception, which was suggested by VINITI in the beginning of the 20th century. Subterranean electrical network models generalized all objects and environments which are situated under the surface of condensed Earth. The development of subterranean electrical network models is following within the proton technogenesis conception, which was suggested by Laurent in the second half of the 20th century. In due time, the conception of the electrical network nature of earthquakes was confirmed explicitly by publications in Russian science journals, such as Science in Russia, Zemlya I Shelemnoye, and Volcanology and Seismology, concerning artificial earthquakes. These earthquakes occurred after single subterranean current impulses which were generated by magneto-hydrodynamic or MHD generators through subterranean electrodes, dug into the opposite sides of the faults. There were found 3 fundamental facts. Fact 1. Artificial earthquakes kept off any faults where single MHD impulse of subterranean current was generated. The Fact 1 reports that the cause of artificial earthquake startup was not the mechanical movements between fault sides. Fact 2. Artificial earthquakes occurred around the MHD center, and distribution of foci resembled a toroid. This fact, too, reports that there are electrical networks in the depths, at least close to faults. Subterranean, so-called wires of electrical network transmitted pulse electric power from the MHD center into the so-called nodes of subterranean periphery, where artificial earthquakes foci were activated. Fact 3. Artificial earthquakes occurred in 2 to 12 days after the generation of a single MHD impulse of subterranean current into the fault. The Fact 3 reports that self-organization of artificial earthquakes foci was within the surroundings depth after the generation of a single MHD impulse of subterranean current into the fault. 3 fundamental facts presented in Russian science journals had confirmed the conception of seismic focus as the node of electrical network which is self-organized in the depth. Charge carriers can be only nuclei ions, protons and deuterons, and also the most mobile molecular ions, hydroxide ions, in this electrical network. The presence of water molecules results in solvation of free electrons, which become the centers of massive clusters. Such massive clusters have very low mobility in comparison with nuclei ions' mobility. Thus, it was found that it is necessary to give special attention to electric charge phenomena related to the preparation of earthquake, before, accompanying, and after seismic event. On Kamchatka, the conception of electrical network nature of earthquakes was developed in the framework of Alfvén's electrical network conception. The evolution of the model of seismic focus was begun by the insight of Descartes that Earth depths are full of solar substance. Then Mendeleev successfully had used the theory of solar substance in Earth's depths to develop the theory of non-organic synthesis of hydrocarbons due to the reaction between hydrogen and carbon. Then Vernadsky developed the theory of Earth core containing a gigantic quantity of juvenile hydrogen. The Earth's core consists of iron atoms with chemically compound 4 protons, hydride FeH4. Also, Vernadsky developed the theory of degassing Earth. After that, V. Larin formulated proton tectogenesis concept on the basis of Descartes, Mendeleev, Vernadsky. Proton tectogenesis concept is caused by hydrogen migration in the form of protons from the Earth's core into interplanetary space. In the framework of the conception of electrical network nature of earthquake, it is suggested that proton tectogenesis intensity depends on hydrogen nuclei migration, protons and deuterons, from the Earth's core to the surface of the Earth. Also, tectogenesis intensity depends on hydroxide ion migration through the tectonosphere. In this case, a more comprehensive name was accepted as proton-deuteron hydroxide ion, or PDHI, migration. Vernadsky's models for hydride Earth's core has been met with support by research from Russell J. Hemley and Ho Kwang Mao from Carnegie Institution for Science. R. Hemley and H. Mao research intumescence of iron metal samples in fluid hydrogen under super-high pressure. Just intumescence of iron metal samples saturated by hydrogen explains the Earth's core density decreased in comparison with pure iron theories. The epoch of artificial Earth satellites had proved Vernadsky's prediction. It was discovered that proton upwelling phenomenon, in other words, the lifting of hydrogen ions from the ionosphere into a circumterrestrial cosmic space. Non-stationary processes take place in the local volume of Earth depth and cause earthquakes, preparation of EQ focus and its startup. The occurrence of non-stationary processes is discussed in the framework of the conception of PDHI tectogenesis in the tectonosphere. The essential part of the tectonosphere is proton tectonogen, large-scale geological structure. In Larin's model, tectonogen is subvertical, from the Earth's core to the surface focus of tectonic activity. Tectonogens have different scales, from subplanetary, Pacific Ring of Fire, to mesoscopic conduit. Protons and hydroxide ions degassing conduits are central, annular, satellite, and etc. structures of degassing that can be identified with geomorphological and dendrological aerospace and surface electrical geoindication methods. Modern development of experimental base and following results by author international collective Alan Goa had allowed to improve the conception of proton tectonogen to the local model of proton tectonic plume. Proton tectonic plume is bounded in the framework of Descartes, Mendeleev, Vernadsky, Larin, Alan Goa model by walls and inhomogeneities of local scale structure, volcano or fault. Comparison between rocks containing plume and proton tectonic plume shows that hydrogen migration from the Earth's core to circumterrestrial space is the most intensive through plume. Proton migration is also inhomogeneous in the bound of proton tectonic plume itself. Proton draw dyes are the way of the most intensive migration. Thus, proton tectonic plume consists in the framework of Descartes, Mendeleev, Verdansk, Laren, Alan-Goer model of some great number of subvertical draw dyes, proton channels, connecting some great number of sub-horizontal lenses or proton layers, suggested by Kuznetsov in 1989. It could be possible to suggest that impulse migration of protons, deuterons, and hydroxide ions is the most intensive through and above proton tectonic plumes between lithosphere-atmosphere. In the framework of the conception of electrical network nature of earthquakes, it is suggested that PDHI plumes are the nodes of electrical networks which are responsible for Bath's global seismo effect. In the framework of conception of electrical network nature of earthquakes, it is suggested that hydrogen draw dyes have different surface densities on the surface of the whole Earth crust. PDHI plume activity depends on the density of hydrogen draw dyes. Tectonogen activity depends on the density of PDHI plumes. There is the most intensive pulse PDHI migration between condensed geosphere-ionosphere above the tectonogens. This is why observation of meteorological elements might become an integral part of operative seismic prognostics. Another striking demonstration of such evidence was the correlation between a meteorological element and the gigantic tsunami-genic earthquake on the 26th of December 2004 in the Indonesia-India area. Later on, interactions between Moon and Earth has been added to cosmic phenomena after when the role of Moon's phases were cleared up for startups of the earthquake on that date and its aftershocks. In the framework of cosmic meteotectonics, the role is the interaction of the Moon with Earth's magnetosphere tail. In the framework of the conception of electrical network nature of earthquakes, it is assumed that there are non-stationary processes in the subterranean electrical networks. These processes may occur with varying intensity in any area of the Earth's crust where hydrogen draw dyes have exits on the surface with varying surface density. Measuring lines were used to research non-stationary processes. Such measuring lines had lead electrodes which had dug in bore pits at a depth of some meters. Measuring lines' lengths were various from kilometers to tens of meters. A couple of the measuring lines, extended along magnetic meridian and parallel, were used to recognize worldwide telluric current components. Such crosses are still used up to now to measure telluric currents to recognize non-stationary processes occurring before earthquakes in seismo-hazardous areas such as Greece and Japan. But it is impossible to take information on fine structure of subterranean electric processes occurring in soils close to the partition of lithosphere-atmosphere with the help of such measurements of telluric currents. It is necessary to use multi-electrode systems to take in information on the fine structure of the subterranean electric processes. As it is well known, proton conductivity of ordered water structure is much bigger than proton conductivity of water fluid and its solutions. The Earth's crust under the ocean floor has a little thickness in comparison with the Earth's crust under land. Therefore, the most intense proton migration hydrosphere to atmosphere is through hydrogen draw dyes located under the sea or the ocean floor. From hydrogen draw dyes, having exits to the surface of the Earth crust, or ocean floor, protons and deuterons move into ordered structures, in other words, within the limits of double electric layers being on the partition of liquid and solid phases, ocean floor to water. The conception of electrical network nature of earthquakes shows that non-stationary processes could be measured the most distinctly in tectogene, which is extended over the ocean or sea floor and coast. At the same time, protons rays occurs mainly close to the shoreline or water edge. Thus, the most informative subterranean electric measurements are taken with the help of electrodes, which are situated in a bore pit close to the ocean or sea edge. Such subterranean electric measurements are used to recognize non-stationary processes occurring over subterranean electrical networks. If a measurement station is far away from the shoreline, then it should be taken into account that the least solid rocks has the most surface density of hydrogen draw dye. Solid rocks are not the most influenced by flowing water. Hereupon measurement bore pit must be very close to the flowing water. Barth had become the discoverer of seismoglobalism conception as part of cosmic meteotectonic electrical network conception by Gutenberg, Alfven, Barth. Descartes, Mendeleev, Verdenscher-Larin conception has become the base for the model of pulsed PDHI migration between condensed geosphere and ionosphere. Due to this model, it was discovered the method to take measurements of electrical pulse manifestations of PDHI migration with the help of vertical sequences of electrodes. Such electrodes are dug into the surface layers. While subterranean electrical signals of fine structure of PDHI migration is interrupted, subterranean electric pulses are subdivided into the regular and sporadic ones. Regular subterranean electric pulses manifest itself as a nature of two sources. The first source of comparatively regular subterranean electrical pulses is Earth's magnetosphere, which is being deformed by solar wind protons. Solar wind protons are deflected to either side of the front of geomagnetopause, which is the boundary between Earth's cavity and the solar cavity. Solar wind protons press noon meridian force lines of geomagnetic field, or GMFL, up to about 15 Earth radius RE from the center of planet. But midnight magnetosphere is the most extended, as GMFL is extended so much that Earth's magnetic tail is found by satellites at a distance of about 1000 RE. Such everyday collapsing, compressing, stretching turns in the framework of cosmic meteotectonics every GMFL into the generator of EMF. The work technique of such a generator can be illustrated in the framework of the study of terrestrial magnetism by magnetic friction. When the Earth rotates uniformly, the outer GMFL moves non-uniformly, moving by jump-like anchor escapement mechanism of a clock. In other words, the magnetic friction of GMFL on the internal wall of geomagnetopause breaks the rotation of elastic GMFL until tension force of outer GMFL, bending by magnetic friction force during Earth's rotation, will be much greater than the magnetic friction force on the internal wall of geomagnetopause. Elastic GMFL slips ahead unevenly towards Earth's rotation, generating the next pulse of EMF. These regular pulses of EMF do not occur so significantly, often in the magnetosphere tail, as in the rest of one's part. Generating process of pulses of EMF is the self-organization process of open system, that is, geomagnetosphere. Therefore, there is uneven generation from the tail to the rest of the part and the back in the model of the planet's regular subterranean electric pulses. The illustration shows such a process in the results of subterranean electrical measurements taken at Kamchatka Prognostic Center in November 1992. There is a gap at nighttime with rare pulses. CosmicMeteoTectonics contains a weight of electrical network models. These models are necessary for the description of non-stationary processes, regular and sporadic, occurring in the solar system. Planets, helio, galaxy, background was the name of the weight of these models, as the development of operative prognostic methods for tectonic events was the cornerstone. Later, it was found the determining role of interactions between galaxy and solar cavities to generate non-stationary processes in the solar cavity. That's why the priority was changed, and galaxy, helio, planets, background is the name of the electrical network model of solar cavity. Regular and sporadic subterranean electric pulses occur as a result of non-stationary processes. The nature of non-stationary processes is connected with interactions of galaxy and solar cavities, and between solar and Earth ones. The development of electrical network models of solar cavity for such interactions was begun by these papers on the issue of solar activity nature, on the issue of galaxy factors' impact on the solar activity, planetary motion and solar activity, on the issue of annual variations of solar activity, on the issue of physical nature of solar activity. For the first time in history, papers presented conceptions of gigantic closed circuits revolving around the Sun relative to neighborhood galaxy magnetic fields. Hereupon, there are currents in the circuits. Closed electrical circuits form forces of lines of interplanetary magnetic fields, IMFL, which flow from the solar northern and southern hemisphere, closed inside the Sun and inside heliopause. The solar rotation around an axis, and that's about 27 Earth days, 1 helio day, turns IMFL into a Parker spiral, and the radial pressure of solar wind protons carries these spiral turns right up to heliopause. Protons of solar wind and all other charged particles of interplanetary medium twist on the IMFL. The tube of IMFL is similar to cosmic wire with current, as a closed circuit rotates relative to the galaxy's magnetic field. NASA's fleets of 5th Themis spacecraft, launched in February 2007, has made important discoveries about the spectacular eruptions of northern lights and the source of their power. The article tells us, the mission's discoveries include giant magnetic ropes that connect Earth's upper atmosphere to the Sun and explosions in the outskirts of Earth's magnetic field. A magnetic rope is a twisted bundle of magnetic fields organized much like the twisted hemp of mariner's rope. So, the discoveries of the Themis mission have proved the existence of cosmic wires as an electrical network conception of the solar system. Pulses of extra EMF occur in a kind of Sun IMFL heliopause IMFL Sun circuits when a planet incorporates in such magnetic rope and runs out from it. These pulses of extra EMF generate pulses of extra current which strikes through the Sun and planets. Thus, the solar magnetosphere is the second source of comparatively regular subterranean electrical pulses, but significantly rare one. The solar magnetosphere is pressed by galaxy protons, which are deflected to either side of the front of heliopause. Heliopause separates solar cavity and galaxy one. Galaxy protons press front IMFL to comparatively a short distance to the Sun, but the tail IMFL extends in the opposite side to comparatively long distance. When the Sun rotates uniformly, the outer IMFL moves non-uniformly, moving jump-like, like an anchor escapement mechanism of a clock. The front part of heliopause has IMFL, which is situated at a position to high-deep, top-bottom of the average solar system plane that becomes nearly coincided with ecliptic. Front IMFL, pressed by galaxy protons' wind, form short-closed Sun IMFL heliopause IMFL Sun circuits. Short circuits are responsible for maximum Wolf numbers, whose phases are tightly locked with interactions of giant planets' magnetospheres and front circuits. But the Earth's magnetosphere is not quite as large. Hereupon, there are no interactions between Earth's magnetosphere and the front circuits at a position to high, deep top, bottom of ecliptic. The tail part of heliopause has IMFL, which is situated at a position to not high, not deep, top bottom of ecliptic. Tail IMFL, which are extended by galaxy protons' wind, form long closed Sun IMFL heliopause IMFL Sun circuits. Long circuits, or let's call it tail circuits, are responsible for minimum Wolf numbers, whose phases are tightly locked also with interactions of giant planets' magnetospheres and long circuits. Earth's magnetosphere can interact only with tails circuits pressed to ecliptic. Then, near the Earth, the gigantic pulses of high-energy particles, which are not caused by sporadic processes on the Sun, should be expected during progression to the minimum and to the maximum of solar cycle. Pulsed breakdown strikes all layers of planet when Earth incorporates in such cosmic wire. Similar pulsed breakdown occurs after Earth runs out from cosmic wire. These pulsed breakdowns occur in subparts of Earth layers: magnetosphere, ionosphere, atmosphere neutral, crust, mantle, core, mantle, crust, atmosphere neutral, ionosphere, magnetosphere. Pulsed breakdowns of Earth layers modulate subterranean PDHI migration and also PDHI degassing of the Earth. Proton upwelling is one of the steps of PDHI degassing. Proton upwelling is the raising of protons from Earth's ionosphere to the magnetosphere. Proton upwelling is a maximum when there is a minimum of solar spots. Proton upwelling is a minimum when there is a maximum of solar spots. To clarify the characteristics of subterranean manifestations of pulse processes occurring in galaxy Sun-Earth system and representing with galaxy helioplanets background model, it was used Solar Terrestrial Energy Program, STEP, STEP, 1990 to 1995 model. The STEP model was modified in a way that closed circuit extends from solar core to Earth core. Sun, solar wind, geomagnetosphere, ionothermosphere, middle atmosphere, troposphere, crust, mantle, core. This closed circuit was developed to explain such sporadic or pulse phenomena as earthquake. The development of this circuit was based on the discovery of cosmic meteotectonic parallelismus, conception of electrical network where non-stationary processes occur, observed in galaxy helio-geostructures, allowed turning away physical nature of non-stationary processes and researching them by tensor analyses of network. Even fundamental equations by Maxwell, Schrödinger, Vlasov, and Vlasov-Maxwell are within tensor analyses of networks' power.